What's up guys, Cliff here from the Sunday Drive. Today we're back working on this MKV Supra and we're installing some Eibach lowering springs. So welcome back to the channel guys. Today we're working on this Supra, and if you've been watching the channel for a while, you know we have a few other videos up. We installed a charge pipe intake. We did a tune, a lot of fun stuff to this Supra, so be sure to check those videos out. They'll be linked down in the description, and I'm sure we'll have some cards pop up for them throughout this video. But today we're gonna be installing the Eibach lowering springs. So he's back, wanted to make the car a little bit more aggressive and handle a little bit better, so we're gonna show you guys how to get these installed today. So we're gonna start up front. Now we already did the installation over on the driver's side, and the two sides are identical except for one thing. There are sensors on the driver's side, both front and rear, that you have to remove. They're both held in by a 10mm bolt. So you're gonna wanna make sure you remove that before you start messing around with the suspension so that you don't mess those sensors up. Now we've already went ahead and removed the wheels. The one thing I'll say, if you have nice new wheels, which you obviously do if you have a brand new Supra, get a socket like this. It's a plastic sleeve socket, and this will protect the finish on your wheels. So we'll have one of these linked in the description, and they're really nice and come in handy when you're working on newer wheels. So this is our front suspension. He does have the electronically controlled suspension, so there's a lot of wires we're gonna need to disconnect. Now there's two sensors we're gonna need to disconnect. Just gonna press in the clip and pull up, and then there's another one right at the front. Press in the clip, if I can find it on this one, and pull down on that one. Next, we're gonna remove the brake line from this bracket right here. It's just held in by this rubber little grommet. It's gonna take a little bit of force, but you can work it off. Just kind of work it up from both sides, just wiggling back and forth. It's pretty snug, so just take your time with it. Okay, and once you get one side pop free, it comes off real easy, so now it's loose. Now we're gonna finish removing these wires. Just a whole bunch of grommets, just gonna pull them out. Now it's not a bad idea to snap a picture of this so you know exactly how they're routed, or you can just go back and watch the video. So pull that, so that's loose. And then we have our ABS sensor down here. And pull that free. All right, so that's our wires. Next, we need to disconnect the end link from the strut. So this is a pretty long one in the Supra. It's held in up top here by an 18mm nut. Now, normally you're gonna want to hold the center and then back this off. However, on both sides, we were able to just put the impact on here and back this right off. So it's an 18mm. We already loosened this side, but that's it. And then you can go ahead and pull the end link out. Now, if the end link's fighting you, you might just need to maneuver the sway bar a little bit. It does pivot in the head, and then you can pull it out of the strut. We're gonna bring over a jack and take some of the weight off of the suspension. And just make sure as you're coming up, you don't catch the dust shield. Now, whenever you're jacking up, especially if the vehicle's on a lift, make sure you're not unbalancing the vehicle where you're gonna have to worry about it tipping. Always make sure the vehicle's remaining balanced and that you're safe. With the spring compressed with the jack, and again, you want to be careful the vehicle's not lifting off of whatever you have it up on. We're working on a lift, so make sure the vehicle is staying stable. If you start to see the vehicle lift, stop. But with the spring compressed now with the jack, we're just hand tightening down these spring compressors. Now, normally I like to use a really heavy-duty spring compressor that goes all the way around about half of a full turn on the coil. But in this case, this is going to be our easiest way to do this since we're just putting the lowering springs on and don't need to fully remove the strut from the vehicle. It's going to save you guys a lot of time. And we'll have these linked down in the description. Now, these are also not very heavy-duty springs. We do a lot of work on my Silverado or even like a 5 Series BMW. Much heavier duty springs, so you definitely want to be more careful when working with those, but with any spring you still want to be careful. They're usually taking up a lot of weight and are under a lot of pressure or tension. Now you'll notice that we're not really able to use a tool on these because the tightening bolt is at the top. So what we're doing is just hand tightening these down because the jack actually compressed the spring already enough for us. So we're just hand threading these on so that when the jack is lowered, this will remain compressed because of these spring compressors. Now we need to access the top of the strut up in the engine bay. You're going to unlock this. It's just a 90-degree twist. It has a convenient little icon that shows you how to do it. All right, so you're gonna lift this up. Now it does have some wires on this side that the driver's side does not have, so just push those out. All right. And all right. There it goes. All right, and that's actually going to give us enough clearance without unclipping that. So we'll set that to the side like that. If you do want to remove this, it's just got a pinch connection at the bottom, so you're going to pinch that together, and then this will pull out and through. But it's out of our way, so I'm just going to leave it in. Now we need to remove this plastic cover. It's held in by 2 push pins. Pry tool like this works perfect. Okay. So you pull out the center, and then the entire pin will pull out. And then there's one more right back here. And then it's actually clipped into the top of the strut housing right here. So just right there. And now we have access to the top of our strut. Now this is an 18mm nut, and just like with your end links, there is a centering bolt. However, a lot of times you can actually get this nut to come off without holding that, so that's what we're going to try first. I like to have a socket just like this. It has a pass-through where you can hold the middle, and it also allows you to see if that center shaft is spinning. All right, so unfortunately, it is spinning on the shaft here. Now, even though it's tempting, you should never really use an impact on a strut that you're going to be reusing or installing into a vehicle. It can damage the shock body itself. So you're going to take your Allen key and hold that strut stationary while you loosen the bolt, and we'll have this socket linked down in the description. Now, it's not super tight, so you shouldn't have to fight it, but you obviously are going to have to keep moving around to get that to come out. Now keep in mind, a lot of the nuts and bolts that you're removing during this installation are technically single use. Does that mean you have to replace them? No, but it is suggested, so just keep that in mind. If you would end up having a issue with one of your bolts or nuts, you are going to wish that you had replaced it. So we'll try to link all the parts that you are going to need to replace technically down in the description so you have them for your reference. Now you can see the spring is loose and we're free of the top hat. Now we went over to the other side and straightened out the wheel because that's going to give you more clearance to pull this down and out. So right now the spring has plenty of clearance, but the strut itself is kind of snug. So you gotta push it down. And actually what I'm gonna have to do is have Leo put his foot right on here. Ready? There it goes. All right, and we are out. Now keep in mind this spring is under tension, so don't just go start pulling these off willy-nilly. Take your time with it, make sure you're safe, proper safety equipment on, and if you haven't used a spring compressor before, you know, maybe take it to a mechanic or go to talk to somebody that has. You just want to be very careful when using these. Just pull that out. Now we actually aren't going to need these to install the new springs because they're lowering springs, but off camera we're going to safely remove these. Just remove them one at a time. A little bit on each. Don't fully remove one, but loosen each one a little bit. Just keep going back and forth until they're both loose. Now, Eibach provides a new bump stop, so we're going to be using that one. Since we're a lowering spring, it's going to need to be able to go up higher than stock. So that's our new one. And we're just going to, it's going to be sitting up here, and we're going to just push that on like so. And then this is going to install on top of our new spring. Now when you go and put your spring on, just make sure the lettering is in the right orientation, top down, and just slide that over top. Now there is a rubber boot on the bottom, and you're just going to want to have the end of the spring sitting so that it's oriented in the correct direction. There's basically a stop point on the rubber boot, and that's where you want your spring to stop. The top boot also has a stop point, and that's where the end of the spring is going to go. Watch your fenders, obviously, while you're working. The one nice thing about the Supra is the middle of the fender is plastic, so you can't mess anything up right there. That's it. Okay, thank you. All right, now that we have that back in place, we're gonna reinstall the jack below your strut, and we're gonna jack this up until that strut comes through the top hat. Now you're gonna wanna be looking down from the top. Let it down a little for me, Leo. Reinstall the 18mm nut. So we're going to finish tightening this up, and then we're going to torque it down to spec. Torque specs will be in the description of the video. Go ahead and pull the jack out. Reinstall your tie rod in. And the 16mm nut. Now you may have to hold the center shaft with the T30 Torx bit, but sometimes you get lucky and it'll tighten up for you. So let's see how it goes. All right, so we got lucky on that. Didn't have to use a wrench and T30. It torqued right up for us. Now we're gonna reconnect all these wires. Now we're all done up front. Let's go to the back. First, remove this splash shield. It's held on by 10mm nuts. Disconnect your electrical connection. Same type of connection as the front. Just push the tab in, pull up. All right, and then we're going to remove the wire from the strut, and then the ABS wire as well. All right. Those are the only two you have to remove on this side. Now, just like with the front, there is a sensor over on the driver's side that you do need to disconnect, and that's held in by a 10mm bolt. Next, we're going to remove the 3 E12s that hold in the top of your strut. Now we're going to remove the bolt from the bottom of the strut. It's held on by an 18mm nut, and the bolt is also 18mm. With the tension taken off this bolt, we're going to remove it. It's an E20 bolt, and on the other side is a 21mm nut. Now you're going to have to play with the height of the jack, raising it and lowering it until you find the sweet spot where this bolt comes out pretty easily. You shouldn't have to beat it out very hard. There you go. So you just don't want to have to force it out. Just take your time with it, play with the height of the jack. Once one side comes out, it tends to twist a little bit. So just play with it, and you should be able to get it out okay. Now we're going to push down on and let the strut come down through the bottom, actually. Found that to be the easiest. And you can pull your spring out through the top. All right, so we have the rear strut set up in our vise here. We're going to pop this top cap off. And this is held in by a 16mm nut, and just like with the front, it has an Allen key insert. On the other rear shock, we were actually able to hold the strut and loosen this without needing to hold the center. However, on this one, the strut is starting to spin. Now, a lot of people will just throw an impact here and back it off. I don't recommend doing that. You can damage the strut. especially with these electronically controlled struts. They're very expensive to replace, so I would not recommend it. Now, normally you want to have some type of pass-through socket. Unfortunately, I don't have a 16 millimeter. I have a ton of pass-through sockets, but none of them are 16 mil. So what I've taken is just one of my old impact sockets and putting it on here. Now, these aren't on very tight, which is nice. And then I have my long 5 millimeter Allen key here, or hex key, and that is enough to hold it. So again, these aren't that tight, which is nice because otherwise I'd be in trouble because I don't have the right size socket. So I'll be adding a socket to my collection, as I'm sure we're going to be doing more Supras in the future. All right, now the reason we had to remove the strut is obviously there's no spring installed on here, but we have a new bump stop we're going to be installing. So this is the bump stop right here. I'm going to slip that over. Now it's really pretty tight, so it's going to want to compress. Once the strut is all the way down, you should get it to slip on, and there it goes. All right, now we have a new dust boot that they've included in your kit as well, and you're just going to have to work this on top. There you go. You're gonna need to have that bump stop pushed on a little way so that this can go all the way into the top hat. All right, take the old rubber topper from your original spring and you're gonna put that onto your new lowering spring, and just with like the fronts, the spring is gonna end at that stop right there. All right, and there's a similar rubber pad on the bottom here. So we're gonna stick this down in. All right. Okay. Now we can reinstall the strut. That back up in place. Reinstall the E12s. Always start these by hand and make sure they're not cross-threading. And torque these down to spec. All right, we're going to jack up on the bottom here again so that we can get our lower strut bolt reinstalled. Now before torquing the lower strut bolt down, we're going to get this outer bolt installed first. Come on. Keep going. Keep going. Oh, wrong way. Probably the hardest part of the install is just getting this bolt to line back up because that bushing likes to turn. All right, so we got this fed through. It wouldn't push through. We actually used the impact to just slowly drill it back through, thread it through. And now on the inside, it's misaligned, so we're gonna be raising and lowering the jack and playing with this to get it to go through on the other side. We're gonna take a pry bar between the knuckle and the strut and pry out. And now, Leo, can you jack up a little more for me? Let's see if it goes. It's close, actually.
Oh, it's right there.
Now, we're not gonna torque this big bolt that we just installed until the weight is on the car, because it has a rubber bushing. If you torque it up here and then the car then has the weight put onto it, you're going to deform this bushing potentially. So you want to torque this one down with the weight on the car. So we're going to put a couple ramps under these back wheels and then torque it down. But we can torque this one down right here. All right, first we're just going to snug this up. Torque it down to spec. All right. All right, reinstall your wires. All right, now we're going to throw this wheel back on, lower it down, torque down the two outer bolts, the one on this and the other side, and then we'll throw those two cover plates back on, and we're good to go. All right, so we have the car lowered down onto ramps, so we have some weight on the rear wheels, and we're going to torque those outer bolts down. All right, so we didn't do a pre-measurement, but Supra is going to be sitting where the Supra is. So if you want to know where you're sitting, take a tape measure out, measure it, but we're going to do a post-measurement. Now, the vehicle is going to settle, so you don't want to go and get an alignment done right away. You do want to have an alignment done after doing this, but I would definitely drive it for a little bit, a day or two, make sure everything is settled out. But right now, at the rear, we are sitting at the fender at 26.5 inches. And at the front, we're sitting at 26 inches. All right, that's it, guys. That's the installation all done. I really hope this video was helpful for you guys. As always, the parts and tools will be linked down in the description, and it really does help us out when you go through those links. And if you're interested in having us install some lowering springs on your Supra, be sure to shoot us a message. Our contact information is below. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and we'll see you back here next time.